Imagine you're holding this masterfully designed, heavy 15-page visual report.
Oh yeah, the data in there is just incredible.
It really is. The title right on the front is, let me read it, Transition and Growth, a comprehensive development analysis of Europe and Central Asia, non-high income.
Quite a mouthful, right?
Right. But honestly, so important because today, for this deep dive, our mission is to take this massive stack of World Bank data covering 1960 all the way to 2023 and, well, extract the most mind-blowing aha moments.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them. It's not just, a dry list of numbers.
Exactly. It's the story of an entire region's transformation over 6 decades. I mean, just looking at the cover page sets the mood. It's got this stark, pure white background, and right in the middle, there's a minimalist dark blue outline of the Europe and Central Asia map.
It's very clean, very striking.
It is. And you are the perfect guy to help us navigate all this. We're going to hit the 6 key dimensions of this report, which are, population, economy, education, health, infrastructure, and environment.
I am super excited to dig into it because the trajectory of this region is just fascinating.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we get into the crazy numbers, we really need to define the geography here.
Right. The geographic definition is absolutely critical. So we're looking at the Europe and Central Asia region, but, and this is key, we are strictly excluding high-income countries.
So no, like, wealthy Western European nations.
Exactly. By filtering those out, we are zeroing in on this massive transitional zone. We're talking out an area covering roughly 6 million square kilometers.
Wow, 6 million.
Yeah. It's a huge, complex canvas.
Okay, so let's start with the human canvas. Pages 3 and 4 of the report are all about population booms, city lights, and, well, a graying horizon.
The demographic shifts are wild.
They really are. So back in 1960, the population was about 120 million people, and it surges, just climbs steadily up to 217 million in 2023. But then...
It hits a wall.
Yes. Around 2020, the growth just flatlines. The report has this really stark visual. It's a smooth green line showing the population growth, and it just levels off.
And right beneath that, you have urbanization.
Right, intercepting with this dark gray area on the chart representing urbanization, which, by the way, climbed steadily from 44.6% back in 1960. People are just rushing into the cities.
They are. But the most critical demographic shift isn't just where they live. It's how old they are.
Yeah. The age data is where it gets a little scary. So the working age population, that's people 15 to 64, it peaked in 2010 at roughly 68.2%.
And it's been sliding down ever since. I think it's currently at, 65.7%?
Exactly. While at the exact same time, the 65 and older demographic has nearly doubled. It jumped from 5.9% to a staggering 11.2%.
Yeah.
It's like watching a booming startup city suddenly realize all its hipsters are retiring. The playgrounds are slowly being replaced by retirement homes.
That is a great way to put it. What's fascinating here is the underlying economic mechanic. If you look at the stacked area chart in the report.
The one with the soft pastel tones.
Yes, that one. There's an exact arrow highlighting that 65-plus spike. What we are seeing is the concept of a closing demographic dividend.
Okay, break that down for us. What does that actually mean?
So, a demographic dividend happens when you have a huge boom in your working age population. The sheer volume of workers is enough to drive economic growth all by themselves.
Because you just have so many people building things, buying things, paying taxes.
Right. But it's temporary. When that group ages out, the dividend closes. The raw volume of workers can no longer carry the economy.
So, to you, the listener, think about your own country's demographics right now. I mean, are you prepping for a future where there are more retirees than new workers? Because this data is basically a global preview.
It absolutely is. It's a preview of the pressure that builds up when a workforce shrinks. And that pressure leads right into our second section, the economic roller coaster.
And what a roller coaster it is. We're looking at pages 5 through 8 now, from the trauma of the 90s to the rise of the service sector.
The 90s data is, well, it's brutal to look at.
Yeah, catastrophic is the word. There's this pale red bar on the chart with a red circle labeled transition pain. In 1994, GDP growth plummeted to around negative 9.9%.
Right. And strictly looking at the data impartially, transitioning from centrally planned economies to open markets caused a massive systemic shock.
It wiped out almost 10% of their economy in a single year. But then the rebound is just massive. They hit a 7.1% recovery window in 2021.
And the wealth creation over the last 2 decades is staggering. If you look at gross national income, or GNI, per capita using the Atlas method.
Which strips out the crazy currency fluctuations, right?
Exactly. It gives us a stable baseline. It's skyrocketed from roughly $1,000 in 2000 to over $6,000 in 2023.
That's a six-fold
It
increase.
is. But the structure of that wealth completely changed. Agriculture's share of GDP dropped from 12.4% down to roughly 6.5%.
While the service sector just exploded, it ballooned from 34% to over 55%, and you can see it on the report's butterfly chart, which compares male and female labor participation, hovering stubbornly around 57 to 60%.
Yeah, that participation rate is surprisingly flat despite the massive industry shift.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Looking at the dual axis chart showing GNI versus GDP, I have to push back a little. Are these countries just skipping the heavy industrial manufacturing phase entirely?
I mean,
Well, normally you go from farms to factories to offices, but it looks like they're jumping straight to a service economy. It feels like skipping the desktop computer phase and going straight to the smartphone.
that's a very sharp observation.
Mm-hmm.
And strictly analyzing the economic fallout and recovery without getting into the politics of the 90s, much of their old heavy industry collapsed and was never rebuilt.
They just leaped right over it.
Yes. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, this rise in the service sector, which you can see mapped out in that minimalist dark blue area chart, is a double-edged sword.
How so? Because services generate a lot of wealth.
They do, but they rely heavily on human capital. And as we established in Section 1, their workforce is actively shrinking.
Ah.
Yeah, you can't run a booming 55% service economy with a shrinking workforce unless every single worker is highly productive.
Wow. Okay. So if your workforce is shrinking, but your economy is shifting to high-value services, your people better be incredibly well-educated and healthy.
Exactly. Which brings us perfectly to the third dimension of this report, the human capital triumph.
Pages 9 and 10, literacy, longevity, and leveling the playing field. The numbers here are honestly hard to believe.
They're phenomenal.
Adult literacy is sitting at an astounding 99%. And youth literacy, 99.9%.
Practically everyone.
And the Gender Parity Index, the GPI, in education is virtually 1.0. The report visualizes this with this really satisfying circular progress chart that is almost completely filled in.
It shows that boys and girls are getting the exact same access to education.
And they are living longer, too. The visual here is a dual-line graph, light blue for women, light gray for men. Life expectancy has jumped from around 60 years in 1960 to 73.4 years in 2022.
But the most crucial health metric is the infant mortality rate.
Right. It plummeted from 50 per 1,000 births in 1990 down to just over 11 per 1,000.
Which is a profound structural shift for any society.
So with 99.9% youth literacy and perfect gender parity, I have to ask, is this region essentially sitting on a gold mine of untapped human potential that the rest of the world is just underestimating?
I would argue yes. If you synthesize this data, education and health are the foundational bedrock. I call them the basement of the economy.
The basement. I like that. You can't build a house without it.
Right. And when infant mortality drops that drastically and life expectancy rises, family dynamics change. Families tend to have fewer children, but they invest far more heavily in the education of the children they do have.
Which perfectly explains that 99.9% literacy rate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And connecting this back to the labor market, highly educated, healthy workers are exactly what's needed for that 55% service-based economy to survive.
You know, I just want to pause and say to you, the listener, this is the literal definition of progress. If you ever find yourself feeling cynical about global development, just look at that infant mortality drop from 50 to 11.
It represents millions of tragedies avoided.
It really does. But moving into Section 4, the modern era. Because being healthy and educated is great, but in today's world, you also need to be plugged in.
Infrastructure is everything for a service economy.
And looking at pages 11, 12, and 13, their infrastructure is wild. Electricity access is essentially at 100% as of 2023.
Everyone is on the grid.
Yep. And internet usage skyrocketed from basically near zero in 2000 to roughly 85% in 2022.
With a huge chunk of that being high-speed broadband.
Right. They hit 23.1 broadband subscriptions per 100 people. There's this really clever Wi-Fi signal infographic in the report showing that surge.
Which allows them to participate in global trade at a massive scale.
Oh, trade integration is huge. Goods exports hit $537 billion in 2022. And the report uses these flowing Sankey diagrams to show that over 65% of those exports are going to high-income economies.
And there's always but this modern infrastructure wasn't free.
No, it wasn't. And here's the massive risk in the data. External debt is absolutely surging. It reached $1.17 trillion in 2022.
Trillion with a T.
With a T.
Mhm.
And the region spent $50.1 billion just on debt service in 2022 alone, just the interest and payments. It's marked on the report by this really ominous red dashed line.
Yeah, that red line is the anxiety of every finance minister in the region.
So what does this all mean? I'm looking at these stack bar charts showing public and private non-guaranteed debt, and I have to pose a tough question here.
Go for it.
They are hyperconnected, trading hundreds of billions with rich countries, but they owe over $1 trillion. Is this a house of cards? I mean, are they essentially financing this beautiful transition on a giant global credit card?
This raises an important question about the nature of debt itself. We have to break down the burden. There is a huge difference between productive debt and dangerous debt.
Like taking out a student loan versus maxing out a credit card on vacation.
Precisely. Much of this debt was used to build that 100% electricity grid, the broadband networks, and the schools. That is productive debt. It generates the very economic engine needed to pay it back.
But $50 billion a year in service is still a heavy anchor.
It is. And the real vulnerability is that 65% export figure to high-income countries. They are deeply reliant on Western markets. If the high-income world sneezes, this region catches a very severe cold.
Wow. So if Europe or the U.S. goes into a recession, this region's exports drop, but that trillion-dollar debt payment stays exactly the same.
Exactly. The margins for error are very thin.
Which means, to pay off that debt, the region has to keep growing rapidly. But, and this leads us to Section 5, our final data section, they have to do it without destroying their environment.
The green horizon, page 14.
Right. And historically, rapid growth meant burning a lot of coal. But the data here is surprising. Energy utilization efficiency is improving rapidly. The amount of energy needed to produce a unit of GDP has significantly declined.
They're getting much more value out of every kilowatt.
And greenhouse gas emissions are actually down approximately 33.7% compared to the 1990 baseline.
Which is incredible when you consider how much their wealth has grown.
There's this crucial line chart here. GDP is going way up, while CO2 per capita is going down. It creates this blank space in the middle of the chart labeled the green transition space.
It's the holy grail of economics, right? Making more money while blowing less smoke into the sky.
It really is. Economists call this decoupling.
Decoupling.
Yes. Historically, the assumption was that to get richer, a country absolutely had to burn more oil and coal. There was a direct link. But this region is proving that with a service-heavy economy and modern, efficient infrastructure, economic growth and environmental degradation can actually go in opposite directions.
So they skipped the heavy, dirty industrial phase, went straight to digital services, and essentially decoupled their wealth from their carbon output.
Exactly. It's a remarkable achievement.
Okay, so let's bring it all together for the outro. We've got page 15, the conclusion. There are 3 final data cards summarizing all of this.
Right. Achievements, challenges, and opportunities.
So, underachievements, 100% electricity, near 100% literacy, and a 6 times jump in per capita wealth. But under challenges, an aging population, a shrinking workforce, a massive trillion-dollar debt overhang, and a heavy, somewhat precarious reliance on the service sector.
And finally, opportunities. Deepening the digital transition and continuing to lead the way in environmental decoupling.
It's a delicate balance.
It really is.
Yeah.
And to you, listening to this, I hope you can appreciate how World Bank data, when it's truly unpacked like this, isn't boring at all.
Not even a little.
It's the dramatic story of millions of people fundamentally reshaping their destiny over 60 years.
And it leaves us with something really profound to think about. If this region has successfully decoupled economic growth from carbon emissions while building a highly educated service economy, could their specific transition model, despite the trillion-dollar debt, actually be the exact blueprint the rest of the developing world needs to survive the 21st century?
Wow, a global blueprint hidden in regional data. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Remember, data drives the future, and this transition is still happening right now. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.